All right, good afternoon, everyone. It's Rob from the DA here for the afternoon stream. If you're just tuning in, we did some Tinkercad stuff this morning. I've been doing some Tinkercad tutorials earlier in the week. But for today, I'm going to change gears. We're going to do some stuff with Python. Now, before we get started, I just want to be totally clear that I am not a coder. I am not a computer scientist. I did not learn code as a kid. I learned code as an adult. I don't know that much. I just really like coding in Python. I think it's really fun. I love the logic and the problem solving, but I am by all means no expert. I just dabble and I have a great time with it. And what I'd like to do today is take you through some of the code that I use to learn Python. And I had only started learning Python only a few years ago, just so I knew how to talk about it. And I really like it, and I've done a bunch of really cool projects. But I am by no means an expert, and there's probably much better ways of doing things than the ways I'll show you to do certain things in future streams. But for today, we're going to keep it nice and simple. We're going to get started and just learn some basic functions. So I'm writing Python in idle, which is a package that you can download right from Python's website, and I'll just pull that up and quickly show you how to get it. So if we go to Python.org. If you just click download Python and download the newest version, it will download a package that has the Python launcher, it will have idle and a couple of other things. That will be everything you need. So you can just go ahead and download that and you'd be good to go. In addition to that, I'm also a big fan of this site, repl.it or Replit or however you want to call it. This will allow you to write and save Python in the cloud. So it's an online account. You can write and compile Python right here, and it saves all of your projects to your account. This works with a lot of different programming languages, but we use it mostly for Python and Python with the Turtle library. I really like this because it will work really, really nicely on Chromebooks. We do a lot of teaching on Chromebooks. So if you're using a Chromebook, this is a great way to write and compile Python. But for today, I'm just going to stick with this writing the scripts in idle. Sorry, fumbling with my words here today. I'm just going to write the Python right in idle, which will be this document here. And then when we run the code, the results will be in this window over here. So if you are writing code in idle, you would open idle and select file, new file, and that would open up a new script. And then you would immediately want to save that script and title it. I've already done that. I've called this Rob's code, and I just saved it in the documents folder on the computer. If you're just getting started and creating a new file, just go ahead and save it right away because you can't compile the code unless it's saved. So we've got a script open, we've got our shell open here that will compile the code, and let's get started. So I'm not going to go into a lot of really heavy foundational stuff with computer science because honestly I'm not an expert on it. I'm just going to go through some basic structures, and we're going to talk today about a couple of different things. We're going to use some functions and we're going to use some variables, but we're probably going to end up making something really simple like a quiz or some kind of little interactive project where you can put information into the computer and the computer will give you back information. Totally text-based, no graphics. We'll probably do something with graphics in the future, but for now we're going to keep it really simple, and we're going to use the most commonly used function that people learn when they're first starting to code, which is the print function. As I understand it, a function is a keyword, and it contains a bunch of code underneath that keyword. So when you write, let's say, print, it's calling up a whole bunch of code in the background that will basically print information on screen. So the code in the background is going to take whatever you type into this print function and read it back. Any other function does the same thing. It's a keyword, and there's a whole bunch of code behind the scenes that's doing some things. We can also make our own functions. So if we wrote code that did a very complex task and we wanted that task to happen over and over again in the program, we could create our own function, and then when you use the keyword for that function, it runs all the code contained within it. So that's just a little bit of information on a function. So functions often take parameters, which is information that's required in order for that function to run. If we're talking about the print function, the parameter that it's going to take is whatever we want to print. So I'm going to say, hello, I am coding with Python. Now, a couple things you'll notice. One, I created the function. It's purple. So whenever I see purple, that means that the Python is recognizing that I'm calling some kind of keyword. And then you'll notice that my sentence I put in quotes and it turned green. Whenever I see that, I know that I am creating a string. And I'll just briefly explain this. So if I was just to write print hello, I am coding, on and on and on, Python doesn't know that I want to write words. It's interpreting these letters as literally just the characters in the digital world. It doesn't know that this is supposed to be a sentence or words that I'm just supposed to read. By putting the quotes around it, it's telling the computer that this is a string, so it's literally interpreting this as just the words and not anything else. If I didn't put this, if I didn't put the quotes, then when I tried to run this, I would get an error. And also, it's recognizing words within my sentence as other keywords. So you can see with turned orange, and that's a keyword in Python. And we don't want Python to look at that as a keyword. We just want it to print the word with. So by putting it in quotes, we can actually run this, and it should print this out. So if I go to run module, it says it must be saved. We just hit OK. And then in our shell window, it says, hello, I'm coding with Python. So it's printing on screen whatever I put inside of this string. I could put anything I want in that, and it would work. So we're using the print function. Okay. So as part of what we're trying to build today, we are going to need to create some interactivity. We're going to get to inputting information into the computer in a minute. But what we're going to do first is we're going to learn about creating variables. Now, if any of you have programmed in Scratch, you've probably used variables before. Like typically in Scratch, if you're making a game, you'll use a variable for score. And let's say it's the apple catch game. Every time you catch an apple in the basket, your score goes up by 1. And then when you stop and restart the game, the score resets to 0 and then starts counting again. Variables very similar in Python. We can think of a variable as kind of like a bucket, right? It's a container that stores stuff. And the bucket always has a name. When we were using variables in Scratch, the bucket was called score. I want to have a variable that's going to contain my first name, so I'm going to write the word first. I have to spell it properly though. So I'm going to use the word first. My bucket is now called first, right? And I want the bucket to contain my name. So I'm going to put Rob in, and now first equals Rob, okay? And now if I print first, I'm now asking Python to give me back what's inside of this bucket. I'm doing that right on the next line, but it could be way later down in my code that I need what's inside of first. So if I run this, it gives me my name, okay? I could also add other information into that string. I could also have first hold a number. So now if I print, if I run this program, it's going to print 5 because I've changed what's being stored inside of the variable first. I can say first plus 10 and run this. And now it's going to take whatever's in first and add 10 to it. It's going to print out 15. So I can interact with those variables in different ways, which is pretty cool. So what I can do, I'm going to delete this. I'm going to have first contain my name, and then I'm going to print hello in a string, and then separate with a comma, I'm going to add my variable. So it should now print out the string hello, and then whatever's contained inside of first. Which is pretty cool. I can even add, if I wanted to, my last name. I can say last, and I'll put in my last name. And now if I run this, oh, I'm missing one thing. You notice that when I ran this, it still only printed my first name because in my print function, I have my string, I have my first name, and I just need to add my last name. And now it should have my whole name. Right? So we can actually print out multiple variables at once as well, which is pretty cool. So quickly, just to review this, print is a function. Functions can take parameters, right? The parameters that are required for the print function is whatever you want to print out on screen. That can be a string. It could be what's contained in a variable, and it could also be a number, right? Variables are containers that allow us to store information. The information inside of them can be a number, it can be a string, it can be other things as well. And we can recall what's inside of those buckets by simply calling them by name. So I have first and last, which is going to recall whatever's contained inside of those variables, which in this case is the string Rob and Kistner. Okay, so let's move on and let's add a little bit of interactivity to this. Okay, so I'm going to erase all of this. And we're going to use the variable first and last again. And first, ooh, that's not going to work. First, instead of first being equal to the string Rob, we're going to use another function. And the function we're going to use is input. You notice it turns purple because Python is recognizing that as a function. Okay? And what input does is it allows the user, me, or whoever is using this program, to put information into the computer. So in other words, by calling the input function, it's going to allow me to put information into the computer and save it into the variable first. So that means I'm going to have the computer ask me what my name is. I can type that in, and then whatever I type in gets saved in the variable first. Input, because it is a function, requires a parameter. So I put my parentheses, and the parameter is going to be a prompt. So in other words, it's going to be a string, just words, that give the user an idea of what they're supposed to do. So I'm going to say, please enter your first name. And I'm going to run this now. I'm going to just delete last for the timing. I'm going to run this. And over in the shell, it's going to say, please enter your first name. And I come over here and I start typing. And you notice that my letters are just butted up against the E in the word name. One way that we can fix that is by actually putting a colon and a space next to the word name. And now when it runs this program, I have this nice, clean looking prompt right here with the colon and the space, because when you create a string, it brings everything with it, including punctuation and spaces. If I put a bunch of extra spaces, it would include those extra spaces where I'm typing my name. So we can use spaces and strings to space things out just to get them to look really nice. I like things to look nice in my code, so I always do this. So we're going to say first, and then we're going to use the function input, put the prompt in, and basically whatever I enter in after this prompt will get saved into the variable first. Now we'll use last and do the same exact thing. Input turns purple, parentheses, quotations, and we'll put in our prompt, please enter your last name. I wish I could type well. And now if we run this, we have your first name, and I'll put in my first name, and then it asks me for my last name. I put in my last name, and nothing happens. The reason why nothing happens is because we have not told Python that we want the information that's stored within these variables. So just like we did before, we'll call up the print function, and we're going to print first and last. Okay, and if I run this, Python will ask me for my first name, my last name, and now it prints it back. Okay? What we can do in addition to this is in the parameters for the print function we're using, we can add a string hello first comma last, and then we can actually add another string nice, no, I'll do it lowercase, nice to meet you, right? So now when we run this, we get asked first name, last name, and then the computer prints back, hello Rob Kistner, nice to meet you, because it is connecting these four pieces of information together, the string hello, whatever's contained in first, whatever's contained in last, and nice to meet you. Okay? So this is how we can create some interactivity in the computer in our program. We can use these kinds of methods to make like a username and password kind of program where you set a username and password and then the computer will ask you to log in. And if you put the correct information, you get logged in, which it wouldn't actually log you into anything. It would just be simulating it. Or you could have it set up that if you put the wrong answer, it says incorrect choice. You have 4 more chances, and so on and so forth, which is really cool. What we're going to do in our case, just for the sake of simplicity, is we're going to use these input and print functions to create a little quiz. So the code we've got we can keep. We're going to have to introduce a new concept shortly, but it's not too complicated, and if you've ever done Scratch, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But let's change this first print so it's a little bit more related to the game. So we can say first, enter your first name, last, enter your last name, and we'll say hello, first and last name. Welcome to the quiz. Okay, so that way it's a little bit more specific. Now, we're going to create, I think, 3 questions, and they'll be yes or no questions. We can choose what kind of input methods we want to use to answer the questions. Typically, I'll either use 1 for yes or 2 for no, or Y for yes and N for no. I think we'll use the letters, but I'll show you both ways because you're going to have to write the code slightly different. But at any rate, what we need first is a question, a yes or no question. So we will print a yes or no question. And I'm just going to make simple questions. Is coding with Python awesome? So there's our first question. Okay. And now we need to take an input from the user. We know how to do that with the input function. We need to save that answer in a variable, so we're going to need to create a new variable. And then what we're going to need to do in a moment is check to see if the answer is correct or not. And we're going to do that with an if-then statement. If you've ever done any Scratch, you've definitely used if-then statements before. It's used all the time in different games. So we're going to be using that same concept to check the answer. So we're going to go ahead and just use the variable answer, and we're going to ask for input, and then we're going to put in the prompt, enter Y for yes, or N for no. And again, I'm going to put that colon in space just so it looks really nice. Now, I have the question. I have the ability to input my answer. I now need to check if the answer is correct or not. And the way we're going to do that is using an if-then statement. Writing an if-then statement in Python is super easy. We're going to say if answer. We're going to take our variable. So if the answer that's stored in the variable is equal to, and notice I'm using 2 equals instead of 1. The reason being is that if I use 1 equal sign in Python, Python thinks that I'm trying to put some information into this variable. I'm trying to assign information into this variable. So if I said if answer single equals something, it would get really confused because it would think I'm trying to compare the values, but then it would think I was trying to reassign the variable. That doesn't work. So you use 2 equal signs, which compares the values. It's going to compare if whatever is contained in answer is actually the right answer. Right? So we say if the answer is double equals to Y, or answer is double equals to capital Y, because if we had just done the if answer is double equals to the lowercase y, and if for whatever reason my caps lock was on and I entered a uppercase y, it would think it was the wrong answer. There are a couple of other ways to do this with some other functions in Python. I'm just keeping it simple right now by just putting both. So if answer, whatever is stored inside of answer, is a lowercase y, or whatever is stored in answer is an uppercase y, then we are going to say print that's right. Python is awesome. All right. So if the answer is correct, either an uppercase or lowercase y, we're going to print that's right, Python is awesome. Otherwise, else, and we don't need any other conditions for that, we're going to print you are entitled to your own opinion, but I think Python is awesome. All right, that's not too rude. It's a little bit rude, but not too rude. That's good. Gonna give the computer a little bit of attitude in this quiz. So let's talk through this really quickly and then we'll test it. So let's go back a little bit. We print is coding with Python awesome. That's our question. We now have the variable answer that's going to take in input from the user, and the prompt is to either enter Y for yes or N for no. I'm going to actually add another element to this now that I'm thinking of it, but that's fine. So Y for yes or N for no. Then we check if the answer is correct. So we say if answer is equal to a lowercase y or answer is equal to an uppercase Y, then we print that's right, Python is awesome. That's the correct answer. Otherwise, we print you are entitled to your own opinion, but I think Python is awesome. So I'm actually going to add another element to this because there is the right answer, which is a Y. There's the wrong answer, which is N for no. And then the user could enter a totally different letter and we can have the computer react to that as well. So what we're going to do is actually add another piece to this, which is elif, which means else if. So it's going to say if answer is right, print that's right. Else if answer is wrong, print you're wrong. Otherwise, print you've entered an invalid choice or something like that. So we've basically got three different outcomes to this question: right answer, wrong answer, or a invalid choice. Before we finish this, I want to back up for 1 second. So we have this whole if statement here with the colon at the end. When I hit return after that, you'll notice that the computer indents slightly. You see how the print line is indented under the if? The way that Python understands how things are, or where things are contained is with indenting. So in other words, the print statement is contained within this if statement, and the computer knows that because it's indented. If I don't want to be in this if statement anymore, I can backspace out, and just by changing the indenting, it now knows that I'm outside of that if statement. So we're going to say elif answer equals, I got to use the right quotes here, N, or answer equals N. See how it indented under that elif? Now whatever I put at this level of indenting is included within that elif. If ever you get any errors in your code, check your indenting, because that's a really easy one to mix up. So elif answer is lowercase n or uppercase n. Print you are entitled to your own opinion, but I think Python is awesome. So we have the situation for a right answer, we have a situation for a wrong answer, and lastly we can print you have entered an invalid choice. Now, if I was really trying to make this cool, what I would do in the case that you've entered an invalid choice is have it ask the question again. So you couldn't go past this question until you enter a valid choice. We're not going to do that today. That introduces some other concepts, but maybe we'll do that in a future lesson. But for now, I think we're going to leave it this way and let's test it. So I bet you it's probably going to throw an error because I put something wrong somewhere. So I'm entering my first name and last name, and it says, "Welcome, hello, Rob Kistner, welcome to the quiz. Is coding with Python awesome?" So let's test it with a Y. That's right, Python is awesome. And then our code ends. So now let's run this again and test. Ooh. I put my first name and my last name in the same line, so I have an extra long name, no problem. So now is coding with Python awesome. I'm going to put the N, and now it gives me the answer when I put in the end. You're entitled to your own opinion, but I think Python is awesome. A little snarky, but I'll take it. And lastly, let's try this one more time and put in an invalid choice. So I'm going to put in an R. You have entered an invalid choice. Nice. So our code is working really well. We can now move on to the next question. All right. So Let's see what our next question is going to be. So what I'm also going to do is I'm going to space out these questions a little bit. I could also put a comment in, and I could say hashtag question 1. When you put a hashtag, it turns red. That's a comment, which basically tells Python to ignore that, and that's literally just notes that you can put in the code for yourself. So we're going to put question 2 and go ahead and move on to our second question. So let's print our next question. I think the question should be, I don't know, let's think of something good. How about this one? Is pizza delicious? Can't think of anything better than that, so we're going with it, okay? So we have our question. Now we need to take an input and store it in a variable, and we're going to go ahead and just use the same one and say answer equals input. And I'm actually literally just going to copy the text from here because it's going to be exactly the same. Popping that in. Is pizza delicious? That's our question. Our answer is going to be stored in the same variable answer, and we're going to take an input with the same exact prompt. And now we can actually use all of this same code. All we're going to need to do is change the answers. I'm going to retype it again just because I feel like it, but you could copy and paste that if you wanted to. So if answer equals yes, or answer equals yes, colon, see how it automatically indents when I put the colon there, so we now know that any text that I'm putting in now will be contained within this if. We can print pizza is the best food ever. All right, and then we'll do, I'll go to the next line and backspace, so we're no longer inside of this if. We'll put our elif, not that, answer equals n, or answer equals n. We can print, let's make it snarky again. Once again, you are entitled to your own opinion, but I think pizza is amazing. All right. Give our computer a little bit of attitude, and then we can exit out and put in our else, and we can actually copy this exactly. I'm just going to be a little lazy and copy this, so we'll pop that in right here. And now let's test this and make sure that it works. So I enter my name. I enter my name. Is Python awesome? I think it is. And then we say, that's right, Python is awesome. Is pizza delicious? We're going to say yes. And we say pizza is the best food ever. Okay, let's run this again and test the no. So Rob Kistner, Python is awesome. Is pizza delicious? Let's put the N. Once again, you're entitled to your own opinion, but I think pizza is amazing. All right, and then we'll test the last option here, which is the invalid choice. And let's put a W, invalid choice. Great. Very good. All right, let's put in one more question and test it, and then we're going to add another element to this. So I'm going to separate this out with a comment just so it's easier to find. If I was making a quiz with like 100 questions, if I didn't have the comments, it would be a little hard to know which question was where. So by separating this out with the comments, it makes it a little bit easier. The other thing you can also do is put some like extra slashes in or some dashes in, I mean, just to separate this out so that it's a little bit more visually separated. Not necessary, but comments aren't included with your code, so you're welcome to format them any way you like. So we're going to go into question 3, and we'll go ahead and print our question. We'll put the string in. What's going to be a good third question? What's a good third question? I'm just going to put in something, just, is the sky blue? I can't think of anything else. I'm not very creative today. And once again, we have our question. We're going to need our answer and then our if, elif, else statements. So we'll go ahead and say if answer equals. You know, I'm going to copy and paste it this time. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to copy and paste this. So we're going to grab all of this and paste it down here. So if All right, so we have our answer equals input. If answer is yes or yes, we're going to print, of course, the sky is blue. All right, and then if you say no, we'll make the computer a little snarky. Come on. You know the sky is blue. All right, a little snarky, and then once again, invalid choice. So let's just quickly read through this. We have our print for our question. That looks correct. Answer is equals input, enter Y for yes or N for no. If our answer is either a capital or lowercase y, it will print, of course, the sky is blue. If the answer is a lowercase or capital N, it will print, come on, you know the sky is blue. And finally, if you put in any other choice, it will say you have entered an invalid choice. So let's test this. And then I think we're going to add another element to this. So Kistner, yes, yes. Okay, so is the sky blue? Enter Y for yes or N for no. We're going to put our Y in there, and good, we get the correct answer. So let's run this again. Kistner, Python is awesome. Pizza is delicious. Okay, is the sky blue? Let's try the N. Come on, you know the sky is blue. Very good. And let's try this one more time. But one thing I haven't been doing is using capital letters. So for just to experiment, we'll put a capital Y. It works the right way. We can put a capital N. Works the right way. And now let's put in an invalid choice. I'll put in an E. You have entered an invalid choice. So we now have a working quiz with 3 questions. So what I think I'd like to do next is let's add a score. So that would be that for every question you get right, you get a point. For every question you get wrong, you get no points. And then for an invalid choice, you get no points. So we'll basically create a score. If you get the question right, we will add 1 to the score and then maybe print your score is blank, okay? So let's go ahead and add that. So what that means is at the very top of our code, we're gonna create a variable called score. And score is going to be equal to 0, right? Because you start the game with 0. Let's also put in a prompt at the beginning that talks about the score, so we can say for every correct answer you get 1 point. You get 0 points for wrong answers. Okay, so that will give us some instructions. So we go to question 1. We have our score variable that contains nothing. Now we want our score to go up when you get the correct answer. So that means in this section of the if statement, the y, lowercase or uppercase y, we are going to print that's correct. Then underneath that, but indented, still part of this if, we are going to add 1 to your score. And there's a couple of different ways we can do this. We could say score equals score plus 1. So basically what that means is if you get the answer correct, it's going to add 1 to the score and then save that back to score. So now score no longer contains 0, it contains 1. That's one way to do this. There's actually an easier way, which is score plus equals 1. That means the same exact thing as the code we just wrote. It's taking whatever value is in score, adding 1, and then saving it back to score. So from this point forward, we have the number 1 saved inside of score. Now, I think we should add a print statement that says your score is, and then just like we had done with our first and last name previously, we'll simply separate with a comma and add the name of the variable, which will print that out, okay? If we get the answer wrong, we will print something. Let's print you get no points. Your score is score, right? And I think we can also put that in the else. So let's just quickly break down what's happening here. We have a variable called score. We added a print statement that gives us instructions. For every correct answer, you get 1 point. You get 0 points for wrong answers. In question 1, it asks the question. It takes in our input for the answer, which is either a y, an n, or something else. If it's a y, we get the print, we print the string, that's right, Python is awesome. We add 1 to our score. This plus equals means that score is being incremented by 1 and being saved back to score. And then we print the string your score is and add our variable so it will actually print your score is 1. If you answer incorrectly, we have the we're printing the string you're entitled to your own opinion, so on and so forth. And then we print the string you get no points, your score is, and then we pull up what's contained inside of score, which would be 0 because we put in the wrong answer. And then the same thing happens with else. Now, all we need to do is add these lines to each question's correct condition. So if we answer correct, we're going to get the score and print your score is. Then we can take this print statement, you get no points, and then it prints out your score, and add that to both the wrong answer and the else. And then we'll do the same for question 3. So we'll grab these 2 lines and put them in the correct choice. Code's getting a little long here. That's good. And then we take our incorrect one and put that in both the wrong choice and the incorrect choice. And then let's put at the end print. We're going to put in the string, I hope you enjoyed the quiz. First. So we'll put our first name in, and then we'll print another line that says, your final score is, and then we'll print our score. Okay? So we run the game, and at the end it says goodbye, which is very nice. So let's test this and make sure it works. We're going to have to test this a few different ways. So we're going to run our code. We're going to put in our name. And it gives us our prompt for welcome to the quiz. For every correct answer, you get 1 point. You get 0 points for wrong answers. Is coding with Python awesome? Let's put it Y. It says, that's right, Python is awesome. Your score is 1. Is pizza delicious? Let's put a Y again. Pizza is the best food ever. Your score is 2. Is the sky blue? We'll put a Y again. Of course the sky is blue. Your score is 3. I hope you enjoyed the quiz, Rob. Your final score is 3. Great, so that worked pretty well. Now let's just test to see if we put in the wrong answers. I don't think I'm going to test every single one, just for the sake of time, but I really should test every possible scenario of this game. So let's put a yes for the first one. We get 1 point. We'll put an N for that one. We get no points, and you'll notice that it says you get no points, your score is 1. So that's working properly. And then we'll put an invalid choice for this. I'll put an I. And it says you have an invalid choice, you get no points, your score is 1. We hope you enjoyed the quiz, your final score is 1. So nice, this is all working pretty well. The only thing I'm not loving about this is it's printing out the lines really, really fast. And so it's like a little confusing to read. So I think what would be nice to do would be to slow this down a little bit. And we can do that by putting a little pause in between different lines. So for example, if you've done anything with Scratch, there is a wait block, and you can have that wait for a certain number of seconds or whatever. We can do the same thing, but in order for that to work, we need to import time. Okay, so we're basically importing a library that allows us to utilize time. And so I think what we'll do is we'll do our first name and our last name, and then it can print both of these lines, and then we'll have it wait. And the way you make it wait is time.sleep, and then we put in a parameter. And if I'm not mistaken, it's in milliseconds, so I'm going to put in 500. That would be a half a second. I'm not going to go into too much detail about what this means, but in the time library, there's an object called time, and it has a parameter, a function called sleep, and that function requires numbers. We're not going to get into anything having to do with objects right now, so let's just move on. But essentially, this will pause the program for a half a second before it moves on. So before I put any more of these in, I'm just going to test this to make sure I was right about the milliseconds thing. and we'll know if it's right or wrong pretty quickly. So I'm going to enter my first name, my last name, and it's going to put these two lines. Wait a half a second. Okay, so that's definitely not in milliseconds. That's definitely in seconds. So let's put 0.5 in here and try this again. I was definitely wrong about that. There we go. That's much better. I think a half a second is too short. Let's put in 1 full second. So we'll time.sleep for 1 second. And then I think what I'd like to do is we can print our question and then the prompt for the answer, and then maybe we'll wait in between when it's checking. So we'll do that again, time.sleep, and we'll put in 1 second. All right, so let's test this and see if that timing feels pretty good. So I enter my first name, my last name. We get a chance to read the instructions. I might even put a little bit more time. That's pretty cool. I think we may want to also put a little bit of a break at the end of question 1. So what I'll do actually is I'll put it right before question 2. So time.sleep, and I'll put in 1 second. I think I'm going to put 2 seconds in this one so we have a chance to read the instructions. So let's see what that looks like. All right, take the quiz. For every correct point, you get 1. 0 points for wrong answers. Is Python coding awesome? We put in yes. That's correct. And then we wait another second. Very good. I think I might put 2 seconds in between these. We'll do the same for question 3. And then I think I liked the 1 second in between when you enter your answer and it tells you if you're right or wrong. It's kind of like the computer's processing. It's kind of a cool effect. It's like it's thinking for a second. So we'll go ahead and put that in as well. So time.sleep, and we'll put 1 second, and then we'll do the same after this one as well. All right, let's test this all out and see if this works well. So we put in our first name, our last name. Welcome to the quiz. We get to read this. It takes 2 seconds is perfect. All right, so yes, processing for a moment. We got 1 point. Great. Next question, is pizza delicious? Let's put in a yes. Processing. Great. Score is 2. Is the sky blue? Processing. All right, maybe we'll put another break between these lines. So we'll put one more, time.sleep. And we'll put 2 seconds in there. I think that's pretty good. Now let's run this and see if this works. All right. Very good. Perfect. Oh, that's 2 seconds was definitely the right amount of time. Perfect. Okay, very good. I think that works. All right, I think that's going to do it for this project. I think I'm pretty satisfied here. So let's just quickly review what we worked on, and then we'll wrap up for today. So the first thing that we learned is the print statement, the print function. And the print function requires a parameter. That parameter is whatever you want to print out on screen. So in our case here, we're printing, on this line, we're printing the string hello, whatever's contained in these 2 variables, and then the string welcome to the quiz. The string has to be in quotes, otherwise Python doesn't know what to do with those letters. If you put the quotes around a string, Python knows that it's just supposed to treat that as words, and it will turn green. Anything purple turns into a function, or is interpreted as a function. We talked about variables. Variables are containers. The containers have names, so my 3 containers are score, first, last, and then I have a 4th one for answer. Those containers can contain numbers, strings, or any other data. What we're doing in these 2 variables is taking an input, which means it's going to take in information from the person who's using the program, and it's going to save that information into the variable. That could be a number, it could be a letter, it could be anything. And then the input function requires a prompt, which is just a string that gives the user instructions. So we learned about the functions, the variables, and using input. Then we built this quiz using strings, and we learned about if, elif, and else. an if and elif require some kind of condition. Our condition in this case is whether the information contained in the variable answer is equal to either a lowercase or uppercase y. And in the elif, our condition is whatever information the user puts in answer, we're checking to see if it's a lowercase n or an uppercase n. And if it is, we're going to print either that it's correct and get a point, or we're going to print you got the wrong answer and you get no points. Else does not need a condition. It basically means any situation that's not this or this. And you can have more than one elif. You could have if answer is y, elif answer is n, elif answer is o, if that was an option. You could have a multiple choice quiz that way, right? Maybe there's 4 choices, A, B, C, D. You could say if answer is A, elif answer is B, elif answer is C, elif answer is D, else something else. So you can have more of those. So we used if, elif, else to check if the answers are correct and have different results. The other thing we did is we learned how to increment the number in a variable. So score started as 0, and if you get the correct answer, it adds 1 to score and then saves it back to score. So if it starts as 0, if we add 1, then score contains 1. If score contains 1 and we get another right answer, it adds 1, so score becomes 2, and it saves that back to score. So we learned about incrementing variables. We also talked about importing time and using time.sleep, which we learned was not in milliseconds, but actually in seconds. And we use that to break up the way that Python prints out this information. So it makes it a little bit easier to digest rather than printing out a whole bunch of text at once. So that's going to be it for today. Again, I'm no expert in Python, and there's probably some more efficient ways to do some of the things we did today, but this is the way that I learned it, and I have a lot of fun making these quizzes. We do this in class with students all the time, and we'll even make this a little bit more interactive or a little bit more advanced by having the computer randomize the questions. Obviously, we're not going to do that today, but it's a really fun project. It's a really, really easy way to get started with Python. I have a lot of Python. I think it's really easy to learn and really easy to read. We'll definitely do some more Python tutorials in the future, so make sure you stay tuned. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.